Bridgeton, Whitland. I grew up in Cumberland County here, uh, uh, mainly in Bridgeton and Goodtown area.
You have any kids?
Yes, I have three children.
Okay. Where are you? Do you have any siblings?
Yes, I have one sibling alive and two that passed.
Okay. What are some of the most challenging things you had to experience as a dad?
Well, I guess the most challenging things I experienced, I became a stepfather before I became a father.
Okay.
And, when
Is that
families,
part of the three?
yes.
Okay.
But, over time and through prayers and just challenging myself, things definitely got better. And today is pretty good.
How was growing up for you?
Growing up for me was interesting because I did grow up with both parents, and the dynamics was pretty good because my parents made sure we were around family. I got to see a lot of family, and it shaped me to the person that I am today.
What's the number one thing your father taught you?
The number one thing I would say my father taught me is you can never lose something you never had.
Break that down. What that means to you.
Basically, dealing with life and relationships and things that you go through. If you focus on the right things, if something happens where you break up in a relationship, you don't have to let that continue to put you in a bad place. So if it was never meant to be, then it'll just kind of fade away at some point.
How's that helped you in your life?
Well, it's helped me to understand that we have to look outside of ourselves a lot in order to keep it, you got to constantly give it away. It's better to give than it is to receive.
Do you feel that an absentee father affects a child's upbringing? Although you
Definitely.
didn't have it, but did you feel
Yes,
that?
definitely, because I was a mentor in Atlantic City for 13 years. So you definitely seen how the dynamics of a father not being there um, would affect the child. And also because it's important to build a critical relationship with a father. There's certain things you learn from a father that you don't get from a mother because a mother is more nurturing. A father is more detailed and giving instructions and tries to make sure that you follow through more so from what your mother said and what he's trying to instruct you to do. I actually spent a lot of time with my father because I challenged my father. My father was a big guy, and oftentimes I would always ask him when he was going somewhere if it was okay that I went with him, and I always thought in my mind he could either say yes or he could either say no, but most of the times he would say yes.
So how would you challenge him just to see if he would say yes or not?
Yes.
Okay.
hmm
Now, why was it important that you went with him?
It was important because I like my father. My father was old school. My father was from down south, and he did a lot of things, hunting and fishing, and he whittled wood, and he showed me a lot of things without telling me. A lot of times pictures of fathers are painted very rusty, and sometimes, they are. And it doesn't mean that everything was perfect in our relationship, but the things was that I understood where he was coming from because if there was a question I needed to ask, I would challenge myself to answer, ask the question.
And why was that important to you? Because you say you challenge yourself in challenging your father,
hmm
but it seemed like everything was binary with you, it was either yes or no.
hmm
Why is that such a big deal for you?
It was important because just like for myself, my father was a step parent himself, and the relationship that my brothers had with him that were older because he was his stepfather was different. It wasn't a bad relationship in some ways, but in some ways it wasn't like the relationship that him and I had. So I would always try to make sure that that was something that I understood because a lot of times
Were you
the
thinking about the future?
thinking about the future, but also the people that I grew up around because a lot of the guys I grew up around thought it was interesting that it was my father that lived in the house because theirs didn't. So
So
what?
you were well agreed in your neighborhood.
Yes,
because you had your father.
yes, because I grew up in the in the projects, and it wasn't always easy, but the thing is, we made it work.
You said you had three kids. How
Hmm.
many boys? How many girls? Or all boys? All girls?
Two boys. My daughter's the oldest. My daughter's in her 30s.
Okay.
I have a son, 30, and my youngest is 26. So yeah, so we have an interesting, dynamic
Right, right.
going on. Hmm.
So, what would you tell your sons is the most important thing as a father?
The most important thing I try to tell them is to be themselves and to know that there is a important part in knowing how to become a man, because boys talk about it, but men get it done.
Why do you feel a father is needed in the household?
A father is needed because a father is critical to the upbringing of the child, because a child needs certain things from a father that they can't get from a mother. A mother is always going to be nurturing. They're always going to be uh, able to coach you through things in life. A father is more difficult because a father is kind of, you know, um, not as transparent as a mother. He kind of stays back, and a father really doesn't say as much as a mother does. But the thing is, his role is important because um, a father teaches a young lady how to become a woman in a sense, because if he loves her, he's going to let her know what her expectations should be for a man.
What's acceptable? What's not?
Yes, what's acceptable, what's not, and how she should be treated and want to be treated.
How's your father now? As far as like, how was his relationship with you growing up in regards to, was he always home? Did he work a lot? To the point where he wasn't home a lot? You know what I mean? Like, how was that balance growing
Well,
up?
uh, unfortunately, my father passed in 2015, but I will say that he did work a lot, but he still made his presence known. And once again, as I got older, um, I challenged him because I always noticed that as men and men of hue, that we never really say to each other that we love each other. We embrace our fathers like we should, because it's like you have this mutual understanding with them, like you love them, but nobody really says it, and
So you didn't say that growing up?
no, no, we didn't say it growing up, but eventually, as I got older, I made it a point right before he passed to get that across. And the one thing I can say, and I always remember, is I know he did love me because, ironically, every year on my birthday, if I could count on anything, I could always count on a card from my father. And I always thought that was interesting. He would never say much when I would see him, but in the mail, I could always expect to get a birthday card from him.
Consistent.
Yes, very consistent.
So, with that being said, what do you say to a father who has to work all the time to maintain the household finances and feels he cannot give 100% to raising his children?
That he needs to make a choice, because that was a choice I had to make myself. Because living in Atlantic City area, the casinos really don't look at a lot of well, we need you to be here and not at home. So it's adjustments you have to make to keep your finances in order. But what I did learn by stepping back, um, and not looking so much at the money, that it was a greater accomplishment for me and my kids, because being there, I could go to recitals, I could be a part of what was going on. I didn't miss, I tried not to miss too much, because in the beginning of their life, I missed a whole lot. But
Is
as
that
they,
because financial stresses and pressures, possibly?
well, it wasn't the fact. It's just that when the casinos were good, back when I was working there in the late '80s, '90s, it was money was very good.
Especially in Atlantic City.
Yes, but the thing is, you lost the quality of family. Like it took so much away. And I heard the young lady before me talking about, how God blessed her in spite of. And that's what I had to look at. I'm being blessed in spite of my situation, but I'm not looking at the consistency that I need to have, because a lot of times I will find out after the fact, if my kids got into an issue around the neighborhood, my wife had to handle it because I wasn't there. And it wasn't the fact that she couldn't handle it, but it would have been better if I was there, because sometimes later on in life, the questions your kids couldn't ask you then because they're older and they're grown, they start asking you now, well, what was so important that you couldn't be there? Why is it that it was a factor for you to be at work and not be here? So, sometimes later on in life, the questions that we couldn't ask then, um, we ask now because they want to know why. Because sometimes we think it's okay to make this money and to give them, all this stuff that they think they need, but in reality they don't want it, the stuff. They want you, they want your time, because time is something that you can never get back. And it's just like, I have learned through working with others that the basic fundamentals of math. If something's good, you want to add it to your life. If it's bad, you want to subtract it. If it's great, you want to multiply it. And if you can share it, you divide it. Because everything that you do, your kids are going to mirror that example. So if you're walking around and you're cussing people out and you say that you're a godly person, your kids are going to cuss people out. And hey, I love the Lord. But the thing is, they're mirroring everything that you do, whether you tell them or not. So it's important to have a strong relationship with them, just to build yourself up. And you have to know how to share your feelings and your emotions in a way where sometimes men should cry, and we should know how to express ourselves effectively, so that our kids know and don't get confused with who loves them and who doesn't. And that's where I think a lot of times it comes from, because I always used to tell my children that the family is the smallest nucleus of the world, and everything that you learn here, you're gonna have to deal with in the world. Because sometimes your kids are gonna love you, other times they're gonna hate the ground that you walk on because you tell them no. But it's a fact that, just like today, you guys doing this is so very important, because this is a critical question. Because fathers need to understand that we need to be present, and it's not just by paying child support, or just by coming by and picking the kids up, taking them to the amusement park or to the baseball game, or participating because they're playing football or whatever activities they're in. It's about being present and doing what you're supposed to do as a man, so that they know what a man looks like and what he's supposed to be. Because what if you don't have any money? Sometimes all of us don't have money because of some of the choices we made. So we have to put that time in to fill the blanks in for what we don't have monetarily. I also begin to see, like I said, with the other men in my life and through my other family members, my cousins and stuff, who my father really was. Because with them, it seemed like he had more transparency. So by being around, I was able to see that. So that's what helped me build the relationship with him that I did. Because some of the questions I wanted to ask, I didn't ask them, but my cousins might ask them, or I would hear it in conversation. And then there were times where I didn't like. How when you were young, you went to school, you learned to play an instrument. So I wanted to learn how to play the guitar. And I wanted my father to teach me, because he played around with the guitar a little, but he had his friend teach me. And I was upset about that. But then after I realized it, um, as they say, it takes a village to raise one child. So that's the philosophy I had to take on, because I just did the best that I could with what was given to me. But yeah, that kind of stuff made me upset, because I just didn't understand sometimes why he couldn't, say more. Because of him, I've learned to value life more and to do better, even when I don't have the energy to do it. Just keep striving. No matter what, don't give up. That's it.
My name is Sharen Warner, Sharen P. Warner, which is Phyllis Warner, and I grew up in a broken home.
Okay.
Let me see. My father left the total family when I was age 8 years old. When I was 8 years old, my father left, and he moved in with my mother's best friend, supposed to have been soon her best friend. So my grandmother, his mother, had taken my two first oldest sister and then my third oldest sister. He took them because they didn't like my mom. You know, my mom was dirt to them. And I was left there with my other, it's 6 girls altogether.
So do you feel that not having a father in the home at a young age and as you grew older, do you think that affected your choice with men?
Oh, definitely did.
Okay.
Definitely did, yes. You know, I always, I think remember when, let me see, I think I was like 10 years old. My mom was going with this Spanish guy, which I love very much. His name was Murphy. He was good to me. Now, he was a father to me. He was good to me. My father went and took care of somebody else's children, you know, and I never could get anything from him because he took care of the other family. But yes, it affected my life because I always was looking for that man to be that dad. I was always looking for that dad in my life, you know, because I felt like I was the baby, so I never received that father's love. So yes, it affected my life.
What do you feel are the qualifications of being a father?
I feel like a qualification of being a father is to be there for your children, to support your children, to love your children, to share that emotion with them, to always be their protector. Because I feel like the man is supposed to be the protector. He's supposed to be your covering. He's supposed to be there for your children. That's you know, and I never had that.
How much time did he spend with you? How much time did he spend with you? Just all with the other family?
Always with the other family. Always with the other family. And I was 8 years old when he left. Always with the other family. If I didn't go over there, he would never come to my mother's home. So always with the other family. My mother moved away. We moved away when I was like 13. I was 13 years old, 12 years old. We moved to Hoboken, then we came back. My mom brought her home.
You
And
were from around this area? You were from around this area?
yes, matter of fact, I was born in Woodbine,
Gotcha.
in Carter Martintown. I was born there, and
So moved to North Jersey.
yeah, moved to North Jersey, came back to Jersey. My mom brought her home, and you know, she did the best she could do. She did the best she could do. I say that she was a good mother. She cared for me the best that she could. You know, she didn't have much, but what we had, we had.
Did your father ever tell you he loved you?
No, no, no.
Was that just him, how he was, or?
No, that's not how he was. My father would tell the other children. I heard him tell the other kids, you know, in the protection and the covering and the love and you got your lunch money, and I seen him give to them when I needed something. He did for them in front of me.
And out of the 6 of you,
6
you were the
girls.
second?
I'm the baby.
You're the baby.
Yes.
So why do you feel that he's treated you that way as a baby?
He did all of us like that. Not just me. He did nothing for none of us. He did nothing for none of us. His
Why do
mother,
you feel that he didn't say I love you to the baby at least?
because you know what? I know that his mother and him, and mother and sisters and brothers, they had a great relationship. They had a great relationship. He went to my mother came from Sharen Hill, Pennsylvania. She was a beautiful woman, and men wanted her when he brought her back here, and he just used her to show her off. He was very abusive to my mother, you know, very abusive, physically, verbally abusive to my mother. I remember I was a little girl, and I used to look through the little keyhole, and I used to see him beat my mother. He used to make my mother get buck naked, and he used to whip my mother. This is stuff I've seen that I never share with my other sisters, and you know, he just met this other woman. They became best friends, and when the husband died, he moved right on with them.
What did you dislike about your father that made you not want to repeat that with your children?
What did I dislike about my father? I disliked about my father that he was never there. He was never there. He never told him that he loved me. He was never there for me. He did nothing for me. Nothing. And so that's what I would never, I try not to do for my children. Well, they're grown now, but I always tried to do for them, and because of what I never had, I try to give to them. Yes, I did. The positive impact that he had on me is to love my children, show them love, and they have a need, try my best to do for them, and not go and take in somebody else's household when their household is in need.
My name's Eric Macon. My family dynamic is I'm married to Cheryl. I've been with Cheryl for almost 20 years now. We have 4 children, Kara, Ashley, Joseph, and David. 3 grandchildren, Charlotte, Teddy, and Lydia.
So how did you feel when you first found out that you were going to be a father?
Wow. Excited, nervous, scared, a lot of different emotions. I was very young when it first happened. I mean, I was instantly a father. I met my wife-to-be. She was already a mother, so I had a child already, but it was a little different when it's your own child from day one. I had no clue what to do. My wife, we had Ashley, and my wife had postpartum depression, and she went back to work after 2 weeks and said, here. So I was 20 years old with a little baby, not knowing anything.
Right. So what were like some of like challenging things that you experienced, being a father when you first found out?
Well,
Afterward?
Kara was the type of child that would go play by herself. She was very artistic. She would go in another room, and you'd give her a coloring book or some glitter or some glue, and she would disappear for 2 or 3 hours. Ashley, 2 minutes attention span. So it was a learning experience. It was very difficult. It was much different than the two girls were much different. Ashley needed an awful lot of attention. I mean, there were no mental problems. It was just a different makeup of how she was. So I kind of learned on the fly. It was just job and training thrown in, and do what you have to do. Change a diaper, feed them, take them places. We didn't have any money at that time. So little things excited us then. Actually, times were much simpler then.
Yeah.
So it was good. There were no problems with it. It was just a learning experience and a lot of pressure because you have their life in your hands. It's a lot of pressure. It's good, but you grow up fast by being a parent.
Did you think that you were a good father?
I think that I am a good father now. I think that just like anything else, I had growing pains. I probably, with the girls in the beginning, I was too anal. They made a mess, and I was always running behind them and cleaning it up. And I was always exhausted because it was just constant. You know what I mean? The kids, that's what kids do. They make a mess. But I learned over time to just kind of leave it and pick it up at night. But it's probably, out of my entire life, my most enjoyable thing I've ever done. I am proudest of that. I am the proudest of being a father out of anything I do. I'm a realtor, I'm a financial advisor. I'm on different boards. I feel like I'm a respected member of the community, but that is the thing I am most proud of, is being a good father and being there today, still for them.
Okay. So is that what you would consider, like, what's the definition you would consider to be a good father?
I feel like you almost owe it to the world to be a good father or mother. You are producing a child that's going to be the future of our society, and you have to teach them how to be, how to act in the world, how to treat people, how to treat themselves, have pride in themselves, how to love. I guess that's about it right there.
That's good. That's good. Yeah. So, so let's talk a little bit about, I guess, about your dad. What's like one of like most important things that your dad taught you, or was your dad? First of all, was your dad in your life?
Yes, my dad was in my life. My dad still is in my life. Unfortunately, he has Alzheimer's, has had it for many years. So the relationship is much different now. I can't go talk to him, which I really, really miss. I mean, I had my father there. I could talk to him about I think times were a little different back then. I've talked to my girls about anything and everything, including female issues, things like that, where my dad, the roles were pretty different back when my dad and my mom, it was, if there was something to do with, woman's thing, it was a mom, a boy's thing, it was the man. And my dad was there. So I could talk to my dad about anything. I watched how he treated my mom. He would, he was the gentleman. He was old school. He held the door. He said, thank you. He said, please. Even if there was food on the table that none of us liked, he would say to my mother, thank you, dear, this was delicious, even while we fed it to the dog. It's, I think I learned my work ethic from my father. He got up every morning and was out the door by 8:30. He would come home. He would take a nap. He would eat dinner with us and then go back to work. He worked weekends. I really think I learned my work ethic and how to be proud and support your family, and a lot of very important things I learned from my father. I'm very grateful that he was in my life and still is.
Was he, and is he still an affectionate father? Like, did he tell you he loved you?
He not so much. Every once in a while, I'd get a hug or a pat on the back, and he would say, "I love you." But it wasn't like with my kids. Every time I talk to my children, it doesn't matter. I see him. If I see him and say goodbye to him 5 times, I say, "I love you" 5 times. He would. I knew he loved me. I think that's most important. I mean, people can tell you those 3 words are not hard to say. I love you. But the meaning behind them is the most important thing. And I knew my father loved me, and I knew I could always count on my father. He no matter what I did, he always told me, he said, son, no matter what you do, I'm your father and always love you. I may not like what you did, but I will always stand behind you. And he always has.
So how do you feel like, why do you think that, or do you feel as though a father is needed in the household, or do you not feel that way, that he's needed in the household?
I think it's extremely important. I really do. I was going to say more for girls than for boys, but it's just as important for both. There has to be a role model in the family, a solid role model for the children to look up to. And I'm not saying that can't be the mother. Of course, there's plenty of single mothers out there. I was a single father. It certainly makes life a lot easier if you have a mother and a father and they're both on the same page and work together to help that child succeed in life.
What were some of the challenging times you had as a single father raising your child? And how many did you raise?
Raised 3 children by myself, and the biggest challenge was just having any time for me. It felt like I had no life. I mean, other than just being with the children, I felt like that was all I was known as, the father of Kara, Ashley, and David. That was it. I didn't feel like I was autonomous, like, oh, there's Eric and he's doing this. There's Eric, their father. I just didn't have any, there was really no free time, no downtime, which we're all made up differently. I'm one of those that doesn't need a little bit of downtime. So maybe I was a little more high strung than I should have been or could have been. I've kind of mellowed in my old age with my grandchildren, as they'll tell you. Even my children will tell you. And it's a learning experience. This is kind of like, it's a job. You go in, you don't know what you're doing, especially with the first one. You hear the old adage that the first one you won't let out of you put them in just surround them. The second one, a little bit more. The third one, if they want to go play in the street, you let them play in the street. That's a little bit of exaggeration, but that's how life is with children.
Yeah. So let me ask you this: if you have what fulfillment do you get from being called the father?
Oh, it is the number one thing in my life that makes me feel proud. Nothing else in my life makes me feel more proud than when my children say that I was a good parent, or bring up things that we did, or what they learned from me. When they thank me, or say, this is the way we did it when we were children, or there's just nothing. That to me was always and always will be my number one priority. It's fun, but it is a job, and it always will be the most important thing to me.
Wow, that's good. So, do you feel that like an absentee father affects your child upbringing? You think that, and why do you think that? And how an absentee father that's not in the home, does that affect the child's upbringing?
Well, I think if a child doesn't have a father, he's missing out on half of how he should be. It takes both points of view, and I understand how relationships are nowadays. There's all different kinds. We live in a very liberal society, so I can't just so much as say, some houses don't have. They may have two fathers, two mothers, and no, but one part of that takes the side of the mother or the father, I would assume. And I think it's really important for a child to have both points of view. There are certainly different points of view. A father is, we go back to the old days where the father was the one that lifted things, carried things, mowed the lawn. There were certain roles when we were growing up of what a father does and what a mother does. Nowadays, I guess the roles can be skewed, and anybody can do them. But I think that just learning how a father acts or a mother acts toward a child or toward other people, it just helps mold you in life. You can be with your child, a kind word, a hug, I love you, a little note. Once in a great while, you have to take some time off to see your child's play, their game, a graduation. You have to be there. I'll say you have to be there as much as you really can be there. I understand finances are huge, but you have to be there as much as you can. And just tell your child you love them and mean it. Your number one responsibility is your children. You have brought them into this world, and you owe the world and your child to do right by them.
That's good. That's good. So, is there something that you would never say like to your dad, and that you would like to say to him, like you would say to him right now, that you haven't, or you held back? What would you like to say? There's something like that you would like to say to your dad that you haven't had a chance to say.
I would just say to my father that I really appreciate how hard you worked, how you provided for us. I really wish you were around a little bit more personally with the time. And I really love you, Dad. And that's it.
Because of him, I am
the man I am today. And I thank you very much for that, Dad.
My name is Colin Shields. I'm a child of Colin Shields and Mabel Nuzawan. I have 4 children of my own. Their names is Wayne, Charmaine, Tiffany, and Theodore. Theodore is deceased. I have approximately 5 or 6 grandkids.
All right, that's excellent. How did you feel when you first found out that you were a father?
I was scared. That was not a good thing for me at the time. But one of the reasons why I really took it and it panned out for me is because that was time of the Vietnam War, very hot and heavy. And President Kennedy had put an exemption up for those who had a child, did not have to be drafted at the time, went to the draft court, which at the time was in Camden for us, and to get reevaluated. And my classification was 3A. So I didn't have to go until it was war.
What's the age of your oldest child?
53.
53.
Yeah.
Okay, so being in 53 and now I think that I guess the dynamics of a lot of families have changed now. How do you you see that there's a a difference in the kids now being raised today to when 53, I guess they were, what,
When my kids were younger,
1960?
oh yeah, well, certainly is a much difference now. First thing, although they had their little attitudes, not as bad as this now, because some the kids nowadays, when you talk to them, they don't even want to like listen to you. Sometimes they don't even want to look at you. I don't want to relate them as being a pit bull, but I had my daughter. She had a pit bull when she used to go out and swing out, and she had this pit bull. She was put in the back of the car, and that was her protection. And when she came to the house, though, the pit bull was so mean that he wouldn't even look at you. It would actually turn his back on me, you know. But anyway, I don't want to put them in that class. But a lot of times kids just act like they don't even want to talk to you.
Nowadays.
Nowadays.
And it's different than how it used to be.
Oh yeah.
So you can tell by it.
Oh yeah. Well,
why is that? Do you think that the parents are more lenient on their kids now, or they have too much, or what would you say is the reason for the reason why these kids now they call them the microwave, the new millennium kids are now?
why do I think they're like they are now?
Yeah.
I think they're like they are now is because a progression of discipline that stopped in my age group, I would say. The age group of those of us who are 70 and more. When we started working, we started giving our kids a little bit more than what we had, because kids like in the 40s and 50s, you know, most of us didn't have a lot. You know, we had something. Most of us weren't hungry, but we didn't have a bunch of toys like we had, like we were starting to give, and that has continued on from people who's 70 some, the people who's 50 some, the people who's 30 some, and consequently, all those kids have been constantly spoiled by getting a lot and not getting any correction.
So you think they're missing the disciplinary action? Or
Yeah, I
disciplinary
think
part?
they're missing disciplinary action for, my main reason why I think they're missing disciplinary action is because, and I can't talk about everybody, but I'm just talking about my race. We have stopped disciplining our kids the way we were disciplined because we fell to the not spanking your kids with the United States government. That you get in trouble. You get locked up.
The diaper stuff.
Yeah, diapers.
Okay.
Yeah.
What would you tell your son now is like the most important thing to remember as a father?
Oh, man. Baby's first walk, first words, and always remember being called daddy. You know.
Did you get like a fulfillment? And what kind of fulfillment did you get from being called daddy or father?
Oh, sense of power. You know, that made me, that boosted me right up to number one. Didn't nobody have to tell me that. You know, that, you know, and then after that, it was daddy, daddy, daddy. You know, and fathers have have to take a lot of responsibility for spoiling their kids, and especially with their little girls, because the little girls know that they can work their daddy. You know, if they're being told no by their mother, whoever, all they got to do is get to their daddy. If they get to their daddy, they know they can get it. Like if it's a doll or something like that. Because I know my daughter, when what was that ugly little doll came out in the 80s?
Cabbage Patch?
Cabbage Patch doll. Well, she wanted one so bad, and it was so hard to get. So I was working in the supply house at that time, and I had a fella came and said, "Oh man, don't pay all that money for Cabbage Patch." He said, "I got somebody who will make you a Cabbage Patch for $25, right?" So okay, gave him $25, got the Cabbage Patch doll, right? I put it on the side. This was supposed to be Christmas, I think, and then I turned around and I got another Cabbage Patch doll in the store. I saw one in the store, so I got it. So I bought her 2 Cabbage Patch dolls. This is just for example, right? And she was so happy. My youngest daughter, she was just so happy with that Cabbage Patch doll.
Did you achieve? Do you feel as though you achieved like your vision and your goals as a father? Yourself, if you set goals for your father, for you being a father, do you feel as though you achieved them goals, or the vision that you had that you visioned being a father?
No. No, because I look back on my life and as I could have done much more. I feel like I could have done much more. I feel like I didn't make as many sacrifices or good decisions as I should have. Although my kids did pretty well now. Kids did pretty well. You know, they work in school system. They work in law enforcement. And I have my youngest. She has two beauty shops of her own now in Las Vegas, and they did pretty well. But I feel like they could have done even more if I had been on the right track. But I felt like, I could have done much more. I don't know if any man could really say that he just did the whole thing. But for myself, not speaking for nobody else, I could have done a step or two more.
So you feel anybody can always do better.
Yes,
Yeah.
could have done much better.
So now how about your father? Did your father spend a lot of time with you? Did he show you affection?
Oh, my father was very affectionate to me, but my father passed when I was 12 years old.
Okay.
And he was a very affectionate man, party type like man, very happy go lucky, and he showed me affection. It wasn't until he died that I got my less affection, but I learned to get through that.
So you say he was there for you.
Yeah.
When you needed him there, he was a fine example for you.
Yes. Yes.
So you feel as though he achieved his goal because of.
I would say he achieved his goal. He had said one thing that he was unable to do because he died. He said, "Oh, I just want to see my son graduate high school," and but he passed away.
Why do you feel, as a father, that a father is needed in the household today? Do you feel that way?
Oh yeah, I definitely need it more now than before. Because mothers still carry a certain amount of sexism about them. A boy and his mom. This is my view. Because my wife had always told me, just say what you don't be telling what other people are saying.
That's right.
A boy is like protective of his mom, and that is really not his role. The role is for the father to be the protector.
Okay.
Okay, and that's the reason why. That's one of the reasons why I think a father is more important now. And plus, like that, a father in the house shows a boy what he should do, as far as taking care of the family, as far as making the money, as far as showing him which way to go, whether or not he shouldn't hang in the streets, that he should like go to church, that he should like take care of himself, like help out in the house and what have you. And you get that a lot from a father who was there.
So if there's a, there's a thing, such thing they call as an absentee father. But sometimes his fathers can't be in the household because of the fact that they got to work and they got to bring in finance. How do you feel, but what do you say to a father who has to work all the time, to maintain his household, his finances and stuff, and he can't give 100% of his time.
More than 8 hours a day?
What if he works 12?
12 hours a day?
12-hour shifts.
He'll still be home for 4 hours. And that means a lot to a boy to see his father go out and work 12 hours and then come back home, right? And still, be the man of the house. More or less keep him in check. More or less keep the boy in check. Because girls carry a different type of thing. When they see daddy, it's just lovey-dovey time. Mm-hmm. And then fathers, are weak for that anyway.
So he could have done. So you feel as though he could have did better in that area. Outside of that, though, he was a good father.
Outside that, he was a good father. Me, yes. And he was not the kind of man that would hit you. I can't remember getting a beating from my father. I cannot remember. I remember him being a very happy-go-lucky person, and especially when he drank. Or you could really get the money then.
Do you think you took on his personality?
And I did, and my kids would do the same thing to me. When I was, like working in Trenton, I'd come back, I have a pocket full of money, and they knew how to trail me down.
So what advice do you have to give to like a kid that's bringing up his child now, new father, maybe 18, 19 years old? What kind of advice would you tell him for his bringing up how to be a father?
Try to spend as much time with them as you can. And also give them freedom to think. Because a lot of kids, you don't want to hold them back by, everything's got to be a certain way. That's how people get difference in styles and do when you give a kid freedom. When a kid gets freedom to discover stuff.
Were you a helicopter father?
Huh?
Were you a helicopter father, like always riding your children right there? No, don't do that. Don't do that. Okay, this is okay. Or did you give them the freedom that you speak about?
No, I didn't. Oh, no, I didn't give. But I'm saying I wish I had.
How would you finish this or define, because of him, I am?
Well, because of my father, I tried to take on his personality and the way he acted, especially when he was happy. I try to make people around me happy because he was very good at doing that. And I think I'm a better person because I had a father who was easy goer. Actually, like I say, he was not a hard man at all. Show your love to your kids at all time. Whether they are good at one thing or another, don't give them a lot of criticism. The criticism will slow a kid down. Just more or less help them in things that they do well, and the things that they don't do well, just try to make sure that they are on the right track and that you put things in front of them to help them to do well.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for watching the docuseries Because of Him, I Am. It was pretty awesome, wasn't it?
Oh, man, it was awesome. I mean, that interview was awesome. I really appreciated it, and it really touched my heart.
Please follow us on our social media platforms.
Our Facebook, our Instagram, our YouTube, and our website, ColeyCole Entertainment.com.
Please hit like, please hit subscribe, please share this video, share all of our docuseries. We really appreciate you guys supporting us. Because of him, I am. And stay tuned for our next episode.
Stay tuned.
Be blessed.
Be blessed.